I overheard my wife call me too soft on speakerphone, so I reclaimed my backbone, set boundaries, forced a marriage reckoning, and put myself first. I was heading to the bedroom to grab my phone charger when I heard my wife's voice drifting through the slightly open door. She was on speakerphone with her friends. "He's just too soft," she said, dropping into that conspiratorial tone she uses when sharing secrets. Always asking what I want, always trying to please me. Sometimes I wish he'd just make a decision without checking with me first. It's exhausting having to be the one with all the backbone in this relationship. The words hit me like a physical blow. Too soft. The same quality she once said she loved about me. The gentleness and consideration she claimed set me apart from the jerks she'd dated before. Now, apparently, it was a flaw to be mocked over wine with her friends. I quietly stepped away from the door and went to the garage where I keep my tools. Not because I had anything to fix, but because I needed somewhere to think, somewhere she wouldn't find me until I could compose my face into something that didn't reveal I'd heard every damning word. 6 years of marriage, and I'd always prided myself on being the supportive husband. The one who remembered anniversaries without prompting. The one who took care of her when she was sick without complaint. The one who compromised, first during arguments. I thought that's what marriage was supposed to be. Putting your partner first, making them happy. As I sat there among the remnants of abandoned projects, a realization slowly dawned on me. When was the last time she had done the same for me? When had she ever prioritized my happiness over her convenience? The answer hit me harder than her words had. I couldn't remember a single instance in recent memory. That night at dinner, I watched her across the table with new eyes. She talked about her day, complaining about coworkers and asking almost nothing about mine. I offered the usual supportive comments, playing the role she expected, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me. After dinner, when she suggested I clean up while she watched her show, just like every other night, I heard myself say something unexpected. "Actually, I have some work to finish. Why don't we both clean up tomorrow morning?" I didn't phrase it as a question. She looked startled, then slightly annoyed, but she didn't argue. I walked away, feeling a strange new power in simply saying no. It was small, but it was a start. That night, lying next to her in bed, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront her about what I'd heard. Not yet. First, I would test a theory. Was I really too soft, or had she simply grown too comfortable taking advantage of my nature? I would find out by changing the rules of our relationship, bit by bit. The next morning, instead of preparing her coffee and breakfast as usual, I made only enough for myself. When she came downstairs, already dressed for work, she stopped short at the sight of me enjoying my meal alone. "Where's mine?" she asked, confused rather than angry, as if a natural law had been broken. "I wasn't sure when you'd be down," I replied casually. "Everything's there if you want to make some." The look of disbelief on her face almost made me backtrack to my usual accommodating self. Almost. Instead, I finished my coffee, rinsed my mug, and grabbed my keys. "I'm heading out early today," I said. "Might be late coming home, too. Don't wait up for dinner." As I walked out the door, I caught a glimpse of her stunned expression in my peripheral vision. It was the look of someone experiencing the first tremors before they realize an earthquake is coming. Little did she know the ground beneath our marriage had already begun to shift. Soon she would miss the man who used to care too much, because that man had finally started caring about himself. The next few days became an exercise in awareness. It was as if hearing those words had removed a filter from my vision, allowing me to see our relationship clearly for the first time in years. I started noticing patterns that had been invisible to me before. How she would text me during work hours with household tasks she could easily handle herself. How she would make plans with friends without checking if I had anything scheduled. How my opinions on everything from dinner choices to vacation destinations were subtly dismissed in favor of her preferences. I began keeping a mental tally of how many times she asked about my day versus how often I inquired about hers. The ratio was embarrassingly unbalanced. When was the last time she had actually listened to my answer rather than waiting for her turn to speak? I couldn't remember. A week after overhearing that conversation, we were invited to a dinner party at her friend's house, the same friend who had been on that call. The thought of sitting across from someone who had laughed at my expense made my stomach turn, but I agreed to go. I was curious to see how my wife portrayed me in public. The evening started predictably enough. Upon arrival, she immediately jumped into conversation with her friends while I was left to make small talk with their husbands. As dinner progressed, I noticed how she would interrupt me whenever I shared an opinion, quickly correcting me or explaining what I actually meant. Each time, she'd throw a glance at her friends as if to say, "See what I have to deal with." In the past, I would have smiled it off, played the good-natured husband who doesn't mind being the butt of the joke. Not tonight. Each time she interrupted, I simply stopped speaking mid-sentence and took a sip of my drink, letting an uncomfortable silence fill the space where my acquiescence should have been. By the third time, people at the table had noticed. Her friend's husband shot me a look of surprised respect. My wife grew increasingly flustered as her usual dynamic failed to play out as expected. On the drive home, she finally broke the tension. "What was that about tonight? You were acting weird." "Was I?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the road. "How so?" "You seemed, I don't know, distant, annoyed. Did something happen at work?" It would have been easy to take the out she offered, blame my behavior on work stress, and return to our comfortable patterns. Instead, I chose honesty. "I didn't like how you kept cutting me off when I was speaking." "What?" "I don't do that," she said defensively, 92. "You did it at least 4 times tonight." I counted. She laughed nervously. "You're being ridiculous. That's just how conversations flow in a group." "No," I said firmly. "That's how you've decided our conversation should flow. You speak, I listen. You interrupt, I yield. Not anymore." The rest of the drive passed in silence. When we got home, instead of apologizing to smooth things over as I normally would, I simply went upstairs to shower. Later, I found her sitting on the edge of our bed, scrolling through her phone but clearly waiting for me. "Are you upset with me about something?" she asked, her voice smaller than usual. I considered the question carefully. "I'm not upset. I'm just reassessing some things." "What does that mean?" A note of panic crept into her voice. "It means I've been thinking about balance, in our relationship, in our home, in how we treat each other." I sat down beside her, not quite close enough for our shoulders to touch. "When was the last time you asked me what I wanted and actually followed through?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us as she searched for an example and came up empty. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. I need some space to think." As I gathered my pillow and walked toward the door, she called after me. "Are we okay?" I paused at the threshold. "That depends on what happens next," I said, and closed the door behind me. That night, lying alone in the unfamiliar bed, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. Part of me wanted to go back to our room, apologize for disrupting the status quo, and slip back into the comfortable role of the accommodating husband. But a stronger growing part recognized this discomfort as necessary, the pain of setting a broken bone so it could heal properly. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "I miss you." 2 months ago, those 3 words would have sent me rushing back to her side. Tonight, I simply turned off my phone and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring a new day, and a new opportunity to establish who I truly wanted to be in this marriage, if it was worth saving at all. The morning after sleeping in the guest room brought a noticeable shift in her behavior. I found her in the kitchen making breakfast for both of us, something she hadn't done in months, maybe years. Her smile was tentative as she placed a plate in front of me. "I thought you might like your favorite," she said, gesturing to the perfectly cooked eggs and bacon. "And I made coffee the way you like it." I thanked her politely but maintained the emotional distance I'd established. This was a classic pattern I'd seen before. A small gesture of reconciliation that would disappear as soon as the status quo returned. Not this time. "I have plans today," I announced between bites. "I'm meeting up with some old friends from college." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Today? But I thought we were going to my mother's for lunch. She's expecting us." "You never mentioned your mother's," I replied calmly. "And I confirmed these plans last week." It was a lie. I'd texted 3 friends I'd neglected for too long about 5 minutes before coming downstairs, but she didn't need to know that. "Can't you reschedule?" she asked, a familiar note of expectation in her voice. "Oh," I said simply. "I've canceled on these guys too many times already. You should still go see your mother. Give her my apologies." The look of confusion on her face was almost comical. In 6 years, I'd never refused to accommodate her family obligations. "Is this because of last night?" she asked, her voice hardening slightly. "Are you punishing me?" I put down my fork and looked directly at her. "Not everything is about you. I'm simply choosing to spend time with people I've neglected. My friends matter too." I finished breakfast, thanked her for cooking, and went upstairs to get ready. As I was about to leave, she called out from the living room. "Will you be home for dinner?" "I'm not sure," I replied. "Don't wait up." The afternoon with my friends was revelatory. We met at a sports bar, watched a game, and talked about everything and nothing. I realized how much I'd missed male companionship, how isolated I'd become in my marriage. When one of them asked how things were going at home, I surprised myself by opening up. I didn't share everything, but enough for them to understand I was reevaluating my marriage. "About damn time," said my oldest friend, clapping me on the shoulder. "We've been worried about you, man. You disappeared into that relationship. The guy I knew never would have let anyone walk all over him like that." His words stung because they were true. I had disappeared, subsumed my identity into being the husband rather than my own person. I returned home well after dinner time to find her waiting up despite my instructions not to. The house was spotless, and she had clearly made an effort with her appearance. "How was your day?" she asked with what seemed like genuine interest. "Good," I replied, suddenly tired. "Really good, actually. I should have done it sooner." "Done what sooner?" "Reconnected with my friends. Remembered who I am outside of this house, outside of us." She patted the couch beside her. "Come sit. Tell me about it." For a moment, I was tempted. This was what I'd wanted for so long. Her undivided attention, her interest in my life. But I recognized it for what it was, a reaction to my withdrawal, not a genuine change. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "I'm tired. I think I'll turn in early." "In our bed?" she asked hopefully. I hesitated, then shook my head. "Not yet. I still need some space." Her face fell, but she nodded. As I turned to go upstairs, she spoke again, her voice small. "How long is this going to continue? Whatever it is you're doing." I stopped, but didn't turn around. "As long as it takes." "For what?" "For both of us to figure out if what we have is worth saving." 2 weeks into my transformation, the tension in our house had developed a rhythm of its own. She oscillated between trying to please me with small gestures and lashing out in frustration when those gestures didn't immediately restore the dynamic she was comfortable with. I remained steady in my resolve, neither cruel nor particularly warm, simply firm in my new boundaries. I rejoined my old gym, reclaiming 3 evenings a week for myself. The physical exertion helped clear my mind, and the progress I saw in the mirror bolstered my confidence. At work, I stepped up for a leadership role I'd previously avoided, concerned it would take too much time away from home. My boss was surprised but pleased. The project would mean longer hours temporarily, but also a potential promotion. When I informed her about the project over dinner, she frowned. "So you'll be working late? For how long?" "Probably 3 months, maybe 4. It's a big opportunity." "And you didn't think to discuss this with me first?" There was an edge to her voice I recognized, the beginning of a manipulation tactic that had worked countless times before. "No," I replied calmly, continuing to eat. "It's my career. I made the decision that was right for me." Her fork clattered against her plate. "That's not how marriage works. We're supposed to make decisions together." I looked up at her, feeling oddly serene despite her obvious anger. "Is that so? Like when you decided to go back to school for your master's degree? Or when you switched jobs last year, did you consult me then? Or did you simply inform me after the fact?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again, recognizing the truth in my words. "This isn't about the job," I continued. "This is about the fact that I'm no longer asking permission to live my life. That's what's bothering you." "That's not fair," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's completely fair. For years I've supported every decision you've made, rearranged my life to accommodate your needs, and never complained. Now that I'm doing the same, it's suddenly a problem." She pushed her plate away, appetite apparently gone. "You've changed," she said quietly. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "You're right," I agreed. "I have changed. I've remembered who I was before I started shrinking myself to avoid rocking the boat. The question is whether you can accept this version of me, or if you only wanted the doormat." The word hung between us. Doormat. A harsh characterization, but not inaccurate. I had been one, and worse, I had allowed it to happen. She left the table without another word, and I heard our bedroom door slam moments later. I finished my dinner alone, cleaned up, and settled in the living room with a book I'd been wanting to read for months. An hour later, I heard her come downstairs. She stood in the doorway watching me for a moment before speaking. "I don't think you're being fair," she said. "You're acting like I've been some kind of monster, but that's not true. We were happy, At least I thought we were. I marked my page and set the book aside. Were we, or was I just making sure you were happy at the expense of my own needs? If you were unhappy, why didn't you say something? It was a fair question, and one I'd asked myself repeatedly, because I didn't realize how unbalanced things had become. I thought self-sacrifice was what love looked like. I was wrong. She moved into the room and sat across from me, her expression troubled. So where does this leave us? Are you thinking about leaving? The directness caught me off guard. Was I? The possibility had certainly crossed my mind. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm not making any decisions right now. I'm giving us both space to figure out if we can build something better than what we had, and if we can't, then we'll both need to make difficult choices. She nodded slowly. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, I saw genuine fear in her eyes, not manufactured emotion, but real fear of losing something valuable. I miss you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Even though you're right here, I miss you. I know, I replied. I miss myself too. Later that night, my phone pinged with a notification, an email confirmation for a restaurant reservation, one of my favorites that she had always claimed was too expensive for regular visits. A text followed moments later. No pressure, just dinner. I'd like to get to know this version of you better. I stared at the message for a long time before responding with a simple, "Thank you, I'll be there." It was a small gesture, but it felt different. There was a hint of respect in it, an acknowledgement that I wasn't simply going to fall back into old patterns because she snapped her fingers. The dinner turned out to be more significant than I anticipated. She had chosen a private table in the corner. When I arrived, she was already there, dressed in the blue dress I'd once told her was my favorite, hairstyled the way she wore it when we first started dating. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but I appreciated the effort. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. There was a nervousness to her I hadn't seen in years. The conversation started awkwardly. We'd lived together for years, but suddenly felt like strangers on a first date. She asked about my workday, actually listening without interrupting. I found myself sharing details about the new project, warming to her genuine interest. After our appetizers arrived, she took a deep breath and set down her fork. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks about us. I didn't realize how much I was taking you for granted, how much I expected from you without giving the same in return." I nodded, remaining silent, giving her space to continue. "I missed the way things were, but I understand now that wasn't fair to you." "Which parts do you miss?" I asked, genuinely curious. She seemed surprised by the question. "All of it. The way you looked at me, how everything felt easy and safe, and the things you did for me, the constant accommodation." Her gaze dropped to her plate. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss that too. It was comfortable having someone who always put me first." She looked up again. "But I see now what it cost you, what it cost us." The admission was more honest than I had expected. In the candlelight, I could see unshed tears in her eyes. "When did things change?" I asked quietly. "When did you start seeing my consideration as weakness?" She flinched. "Is that what you think happened?" "I know it happened," I said, voice level but firm. "I heard you talking to your friends a few weeks ago. You said I was too soft, that you wished I had more backbone." The color drained from her face. You heard that conversation?" "Every word." My hand tightened around my water glass. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to hear the person I've built my life around mocking the very qualities she once claimed to love?" She pressed her fingers against her lips, eyes wide with horror. "I wasn't mocking you," she whispered. "I was just venting, trying to sound tough in front of my friends. It was stupid and thoughtless, and I didn't mean it." "Didn't you?" I challenged. "Because it sounded like the unfiltered truth, the kind that only comes out when people think no one's listening." Tears spilled onto her cheeks. It wasn't the truth. It was insecurity and frustration talking. Instead of addressing it with you directly, I complained to my friends like a coward. What was the real issue then? She wiped her eyes, composing herself. I was afraid of how much I depend on you, of how good you are, even when I don't deserve it. It scared me to need someone that much, so I tried to find fault with it, to convince myself and my friends that your goodness was actually a weakness." She shook her head in self-disgust. "Who does that? What kind of person tears down the best thing in their life?" Her answer surprised me. Of all the explanations I'd considered, insecurity about her own dependence hadn't been one of them. It made a twisted kind of sense. "So what happens now?" I asked. She reached across the table. her hand stopping just short of mine. I don't know. That's up to you. I just want a chance to make things right, to be the partner you deserve. And if I'm not the soft man anymore, if I continue to put myself first sometimes, to have my own life and interests outside of us, can you handle that version of me? Her hand completed the journey to mine, fingers brushing my knuckles. I more than handle it. I respect it. I need it. We both do. For the first time in weeks, I turned my hand over and squeezed hers gently. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an opening. We have a lot more to talk about, I said. A lot to work through. I know, she said, relief visible in her eyes. I'm ready whenever you are. As we finished our meal, something shifted between us. The air felt lighter. We weren't fixed, far from it, but the cards were finally on the table. Later that night, I returned to our bedroom for the first time in weeks. Not for intimacy, but for proximity, for the chance to fall asleep beside her and see if anything remained of what we had built together. As I drifted off, I felt her hand find mine in the darkness, a small connection, fraught with uncertainty but real. The following months brought a gradual but noticeable transformation. We established weekly check-ins to discuss concerns before they festered. She started therapy to explore her patterns. I worked on articulating my needs instead of swallowing them. The physical side of our relationship changed too. Not the comfortable familiarity of before, but something with edges, something that required attention and intention. We were rediscovering each other. One evening, about 3 months after the restaurant confrontation, we sat on our back porch sharing a bottle of wine. My promotion had just come through. "Remember when we first moved into this house?" she asked, looking at the small yard we'd once had grand plans for. "Of course," I replied. "We had that ridiculous list of renovations we never got around to." She laughed softly. "I still think that kitchen island would have been amazing. Maybe it's time to revisit some of those plans," I suggested. She turned to me, expression suddenly serious. "Do you see us staying here long term? Do you still see a future for us?" "I do," I said. "A different future than I imagined before, but yes." Relief washed over her face. "I wasn't sure. Even after these past few months, I wasn't sure if you were just going through the motions while planning your exit strategy." "I considered it," I admitted. "In those first weeks, I thought about leaving almost every day. What changed?" I realized what hurt most wasn't just what you said. It was that I had allowed myself to become someone I didn't respect, someone with no boundaries, no sense of self outside of being your husband. Staying and rebuilding felt harder than leaving, but also more worthwhile. I needed to prove to myself I could be in this marriage without losing myself in it. And you've shown me you're willing to meet me halfway. She reached for my hand. More than halfway. I've learned more about myself in these past few months than in years of coasting. I didn't like what I saw at first, how entitled I'd become, how I'd stopped appreciating what we had. We both made mistakes, I acknowledged. I should have spoken up sooner instead of silently resenting you. "We're speaking up now," she said. "That's what matters." "I have something for you," she said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a key. "To the cabin by the lake," she explained. "I rented it for next weekend, just for you and your friends. I thought you might enjoy a fishing trip like you used to take before we met." The gesture caught me off guard, not because of its generosity, but because of its thoughtfulness. She was acknowledging my need for independence, for connections outside our marriage. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "This means a lot." "There's one condition," she added with a small smile. "You have to tell me all about it when you get back. The real stories, not the sanitized version." I laughed. "Deal. Unfiltered fishing tales it is." We fell silent, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. There was comfort in the quiet now, not the loaded silence of unspoken grievances. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked eventually. "I think we already are," I replied. "Making it doesn't mean perfection. It means choosing each other day after day, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her. The gesture felt both familiar and new. "I don't miss who you were before," she whispered. "I thought I did, but I was wrong. This version of you, the real you, is who I want to grow old with." As darkness settled around us, I realized the truth in her words. The man she had called too soft hadn't been the real me at all. He had been a people-pleaser who had forgotten his own worth. The man I had reclaimed, strong yet kind, firm in his boundaries yet generous in his love, was who I had always been meant to be. Sometimes it takes nearly losing something precious to understand its true value. We had come to the edge of that loss and pulled back just in time, creating something stronger in the process. Not perfect, not without challenges to come, but authentic and resilient in a way our previous relationship had never been. The path forward was clear now, illuminated not by blind faith but by hard-won wisdom and mutual respect. Whatever storms came our way, we would weather them together as partners, as equals, as two whole people choosing each other every day. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.